Hello, guys, and welcome to another episode of Thinking Out Loud. Today, we're going to be discussing East Palestine again. Last week, we did an episode where we kind of tried to analyze how capitalism and the conditions that capitalism creates, allowed for the East Palestine or even encouraged the East Palestine crash. We kind of examine things like externalities, regulatory capture, and things like that. But this week, I really want to, do a deep dive into as much of the information surrounding this incident as possible that I've come across while I've been studying, kind of diving into this, with more of a focus on the potential human and environmental impact, right? Because that last episode, we had more of a broader theoretical discussion about capitalism. On this channel, we always try to bring things back to capitalism. But I thought it would be valuable to have, a closer discussion about how this event happened and, sort of trying to analyze just how, big of a catastrophe this is and what its impact on the people and the community and the surrounding communities may be. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and jump into the program here. So obviously you're going to notice my setup's a little bit different today. I have a lot of source material to go through. I have video clips. I've got stuff from news outlets, both small and large. I've got EPA reports, documents, and a whole host of other information kind of that's adjacent to the East Palestine crash. I mean, there's about 50 different things I'm going to be pulling up for you guys today. So I thought it would be more conducive and easier for me to do this with a screen mirror that I'll pull up here shortly, and just have my computer right here in front of me. As you know, I usually do things slightly better framed with me right in front of the camera with the focus on me and certain things that I pull up along the way. So the format's a little different. I apologize for that if it's a bit odd. I hope it looks well enough for you guys, and I hope it'll be conducive to the larger discussion. So I'll go ahead and pull up my screen mirror here, and I'll keep my pretty face down here in the corner for you guys, okay? So the first thing I'm going to jump into here, guys, is a lot of these TikToks and viral videos that have been going around on the internet. I know a lot of you that watch this program may not use TikTok. I personally don't use TikTok that often either, but they were sent to me. So these are some of the more viral clips that have been going around surrounding the East Palestine crash. Pictures of supposedly contaminated snow, contaminated creeks, and things like that. And I want to show these because I believe it's important. We're hearing one side of this on the more mainstream news, one side of this from the EPA, where they're really kind of downplaying it, right? And guys, at the end of the day, even with all my research, I have no way of knowing just how severe this is. So what I want to try to do with this episode is show all the information I can across the entire spectrum, right? To give you guys as much of a nuanced and broad perspective on this as possible so that you can draw your own conclusions. Now, I'm going to show you these TikToks. Of course, as skeptical as I am of mainstream news media and corporate outlets and things like that, excuse me, I'm also somebody that's very skeptical about what I see on the internet, especially from TikTokers or influencers or things like that. As human beings, we all have a tendency to, kind of want to hear what we want to hear, right? Or to see what we want to see and to find evidence to support that. And, at the end of the day, when we look at these things, we have to realize that these are sources that, just like anything else, we have to kind of try to vet and make considerations about. I'm a content creator and I know the drill of, hey, you want to get a lot of likes, a lot of comments, and algorithm, right? So, we have to consider possibly that ulterior motive. That being said, some of the stuff that I'm going to show you is pretty spooky, pretty mysterious, and pretty disturbing. And I personally, I can't explain it. I'm not a goddamn scientist. That's why we go across the spectrum and try to present a lot of different evidence here, because I can't explain it. So I'm going to just quit rambling here and jump in and show you guys this. I got this first one here. You may have seen this. Some of these you may have seen. So.
Wow.
Look at all that.
Look at it.
It's all in the bottom of the creek bed. Now look at it.
So obviously you can see there some kind of chemical in the water settled into the sediment of the river, right, of the creek.
But they burned all the chemicals off of there, right?
That's what I heard, yeah.
So, yep, there's the first video. The question is with this is like, you know, first off, there's several videos like this, including one with the state, the senator or the state senator, J.D. Vance of Ohio, doing something similar. Okay, so, you know, I think we can verify that this is real. This isn't a hoax. This isn't set up. I've seen several videos like this, including from somebody who's, you know, a trustworthy source, right? Senator J.D. Vance, an official source. I mean, he's in there. He goes and runs a stick through a different creek, and you see something very similar. Now the question is like they said, I thought they burned the chemicals, right? So you kind of have to ask the question, like, how did this happen? You know, we can kind of ruminate on how this happened. Is this the result of, you know...
I never seen...
One here. Is this the result of straight chemical runoff that leaked into a nearby creek near the initial crash and then spread to other creeks and brooks? So it's just, you know, pure, unadulterated, so to speak, chemical washing directly into the creek. Or, as they said, you know, I thought they burned the chemicals. Did this come from, as they're burning the chemicals, the air particulates, given that it's the winter and there's a lot of moisture in the air, you know, with either snowfall or just general condensation, you know, like in the morning when there's dew and things like that, was there so much of it in the air and in the water in the air that it settled into the creek? I mean, either one is pretty disturbing to think about. But if this happened as a result of the air particulates from the burning of the chemical and then it's setting from the air, the moisture in the air into the creek, that's even more terrifying because you're looking at a situation where if this is what it did to a creek bed, what's going on in people's homes and in their workplaces? Like how good could the air quality be even over an extended period of time if it was enough to pollute the creek that much just from airborne particulates, right? Okay, guys, so this next video I'm going to show you and a few others are coming out of Canada, okay? A week or so after the initial crash and the burning of the vinyl chloride and other chemicals that were in the train cars. So supposedly there's a series of these, like dozens and dozens of these that have been going around of people in Ontario, you know, just on the other side of the Great Lakes there, seeing some kind of chemical or particulate in the recent snowfall and ice. So this first video is a fella walking his neighborhood and showing all this like sort of rainbow chemical melting or coming out of the melting snow. So I'll go ahead and play these for you.
I never seen snow melt and be this color.
Gotta love the mysterious TikTok music, absolutely. I love it. It is a vibe, I'll say that.
It was on every road I went on around my house.
I mean, this is crazy because, you know, when I first saw this, I'll be frank with you guys, I'm somebody that's a very skeptical guy, almost to a fault sometimes. My friends will tell you that.
I never seen...
But, I mean, you can see here, I mean, there's just a ton of it. A ton of it. So my initial is like, you see this on roadways and stuff here and there, just from automobiles, cars, and things like that. But there's so much of it, It's just crazy. It's literally it's coming out of the snow. Like there's something in the snow apparently, right? So I'll pull up this next one here. These next couple are going to be pretty similar. This one's a woman.
Don't let your kids eat the ice and snow.
Breaking the ice cover on her windshield, and you can see in the ice the same sort of particulate. I believe this is also out of Ohio. Again, you guys may have seen some of these, but I figured it'd be useful to have them all in one place and have a larger discussion, obviously. I mean, so you can see, hopefully my cursor's up on there, you can see sort of this strange metallic chemical color in there, right? And again, like I said, there's dozens of these. I just have a few of them. Here's a guy scraping off the side of his car. Again, this is in Ontario. You can already kind of see it there. Very metallic color. The idea here. This one's a little less clear due to the small aspect ratio of TikTok, obviously. But yeah, so very mysterious. They've told us one thing on the news media, and the EPA said one thing, and it's kind of like, okay, they're trying to make it seem like it's serious, but not as bad as maybe some folks are making it out to be. The residents there are calling it their own personal Chernobyl. I think maybe, I mean, if you're living in a situation like this where there's toxic fucking chemicals in the air and in your creeks, yeah. But obviously, I think that's probably apples and oranges of a comparison. But if you're living through it, I understand the parallel. But yeah, very mysterious. I can't explain this. Again, I'm not a scientist. If you guys have any information you want to drop in the comments, sort of, letting me know if there's any, somewhat usual or normal explanation for this. I don't know. It's coming out a week or so, a few days or a week or so after the initial burning. I also have this coming from here. There's been reports from the EPA, which you can see up here that I'll share with you guys, saying that the air quality is fine, apparently, despite residents of the area and the surrounding areas still complaining of a chemical smell, nausea, headaches, sore throat from the smell. So the EPA is saying that the air quality is good, but then I have this video from TikTok. There's a few of these as well, of a guy, using an air quality tester of his own in different areas, near or in East Palestine. Now, again, I can't vet this, guys. Like, I'm just showing you this because these are what's going viral around on the internet. Are they misinformation? I mean, I don't know who this dude is, Sir_Johns, with his own little air quality tester that he probably bought at, like, Fleet Farm or some shit, or Walmart. I don't know. I don't know what any of these numbers say. But this has been a viral TikTok going around. You can see, obviously, it's gotten hundreds of thousands of views. And he's claiming that this is air quality tests that he's done himself, right? Basement. Ground floor. Yeah, so, I mean, I don't know, guys. Again, I don't know who that is. I don't know what the fuck those numbers say on the reader, but it is interesting. I mean, it could be a hoax. I mean, again, like we said, people do these things for clout, for views, nothing new. We're already obviously seeing from a bunch of right-wingers a whole conspiracy about this is sabotage rather than the more obvious answer that it's just a result of crumbling infrastructure and complete deregulation of the industry. You know, things like this happen and people go and spin it in a whole other way, and they'll go out of their way to be a part of the dialogue. So it could be that, but it's hard to say. Again, I'll let you guys be the judge. But going along with this, you know, the stuff that we saw in the mysterious chemicalized snow that we saw in Ontario, Canada, this is from the EPA showing the spread of particulates and their density. You can see down here in this bottom, this is density, number of particles plotted, and it's in the 10,000s, goes up to 10,000 here, from 0 to 10,000. Black is, I guess, a lower amount. I'm not sure. I guess this is height, sorry. Height of the particulates. So as it goes on, here getting into the blue, it's getting higher and higher up, presumably meaning a dilution, a level of dilution of the particulates in the air. So you can see that the particulates did go through, you know, Ontario and things like this in Canada. So, I mean, this kind of, you know, cross references or checks out that maybe there could be some strange particulates or chemicals in the snowfall, especially as we'll see in some of the later resources, some of these chemicals that are created from the burning of vinyl chloride, they do have a tendency to easily combine with water, right? So I do have that for you guys. Moving on here, I have a few more videos from NBC Nightly News, some smaller local channels, and we'll just jump into these, give you some more perspective on what's been going on.
Pulled from around their property after the chemical release. Last week, Caitlin says that Norfolk Southern, the company that operated the train, came to the door to test for toxins in their home. But before they could, they would need to sign this document.
We were told that they were an independent testing agency. Before they could enter the premises, they handed us a contract. The contract was essentially, you know, to be able to get onto the property, but also at the bottom was a hold harmless agreement.
It states that upon signature, the landowner agrees to hold harmless the company for any and all legal claims, personal injury, or property damage. She refused to sign.
So if I get this straight, Norfolk Southern essentially asked you to sign a hold harmless agreement in exchange for testing?
Correct.
And you did not sign?
Correct.
Would they give you the paper?
They did not give us the paper. I asked if I could take a physical picture with my cell phone of the paper, and I did.
Ohio Senator J.D. Vance is outraged.
We contacted Norfolk Southern right away, and the answer that they gave us, not joking, was that was an accidental indemnification agreement. We didn't mean to give her that one. We gave her the wrong one. Okay? Come on.
Yeah, come on. Now, I don't know. Again, that's J.D. Vance, the guy that I was saying that did a similar video to that Creek video I showed initially. I don't know his politics, but at the end of the day, he seems a decent enough fellow who's actually concerned with the community. I mean, that's saying a lot these days with your politicians in the United States, right? But yeah, so what we're seeing here, apparently, and I guess we can go ahead and vet it considering there was a picture of the document. I know that it was blurry due to the aspect ratio difference between TikTok and playing it on the computer for you guys. But I think we can go ahead and vet it because it made it on the nightly news here. I don't know. Apparently, you know, you have a whole community that's terrified and panicked right now because there was hazardous fucking chemicals spilled into their community and then burned, right? And you have Norfolk Southern going around during this hysteria, during this panic, when people are freaked out, worried if they're going to get long-term effects like cancer or birth defects. And you have this company going around saying, oh, hey, we're here to help. We're going to do air quality testing. We just need you to sign this document saying that we're good to come onto the premises and administer this test. But the document actually has a clause in there saying if you sign this document, I will not, essentially, it's saying I will not litigate for any harm done to me. So all this aside, absolutely sleazy, inhumane. And this is nothing new. I mean, this is the way that corporations operate in this country. This is how they operate. I mean, they'll do anything and everything to, bar any amount of accountability or responsibility on their behalf, including going around having people sign a document that's legally binding with hoping that they won't read the document because they're so scared looking for help that they'll just sign it and not know what's actually in it, right? I got something from NBC Nightly News here, just a news
Tonight,
update.
outrage growing, less than 2 weeks after that massive train derailment and the controlled burn of hazardous chemicals sent up a toxic plume of black smoke in East Palestine, Ohio.
It doesn't smell safe that I'm taking my things and I'm out of here.
Residents demanding answers, complaining of burning eyes, nausea, headaches, and a pungent odor, and reporting dead animals. Officials confirming 3,500 fish killed by the chemicals.
Don't tell me it's safe. Something's going on if the fish are floating in the creek.
State officials now suggest drinking bottled water after telling evacuated residents it was safe to return home. The governor, who approved that controlled burn of toxic chemicals to prevent an explosion, was asked if he'd return home if he lived near the crash site, where crews now work to remove soil and wreckage possibly contaminated by chemicals like vinyl chloride, suspected of causing cancer.
I think that I would be drinking the bottled water, and I would be continuing to find out what the tests were showing as far as the air. I would be alert and concerned, but I think I would probably be back in my house.
Again today, officials saying constant tests and monitoring of the air and water show the environment is safe.
We understand some of the anxiety of the community. We're going to be here until this problem is cleaned up.
I'm not believing those reassurances yet.
Why not?
I need proof.
Janet Hill, a breast cancer survivor, says she has a constant cough and sore throat and worries about her firefighter son, who spent days working the crash site.
I worry what's going to happen 5, 10, 15 years down the road.
Ron Allen joining me here in the studio. The train operator, Norfolk Southern, is facing some lawsuits.
Yes, multiple class action complaints demanding compensation and health monitoring for residents. The company says it has no comment on pending litigation and that it already has provided more than $1 million and other support for the community, and they say they're not going anywhere.
All right, Ron Allen, thank you.
Yeah, so, we're hearing one thing from, first off, I enjoyed seeing the governor of Ohio give this statement because it just shows, I get a sense of complete ineptitude, negligence, a lack of care. He's got to put on this PR face, for political reasons and stuff like that. But you just sense this general disconnect that our political class has from everyday working people, and it really shows there. And so we have a series of examples here of residents from East Palestine, Ohio, expressing serious concerns. They don't trust the EPA. They don't trust their state government. They don't trust the federal government to be honest with them. They're complaining of still smelling things, sore throat, several days, even weeks after the incident. Obviously, pollution in the creeks and rivers. And all the while, as we'll see, I have some EPA updates. They are apparently doing air testing and things like this and testing people's homes. But the question is, what sort of tests are they doing? Are they testing people's urine? Are they testing people's blood for exposure? What the levels of that exposure are? And as we see here, 3,500 fish killed in the creeks. And they're saying apparently that the city wells are safe for right now. But the question is, if this stuff has leaked into the creeks and presumably all into the topsoil in the area, you have a plume that can occur where the runoff, the snow melt will cause these chemicals, whatever high concentrations they are, to seep into the actual groundwater, into the wells that people drink from. So, it's an ongoing thing, and we'll have more of a discussion on this later as well. It's not just... this is going to be something that goes on potentially for years, testing and follow-up and stuff like this. And I think we all get the sense that this corporation is trying to put on as good a face as possible in the interim and hope for it all to blow over with time, right? I'm going to reference like Erin Brockovich and the Pacific Gas and Electric Company case from the 90s a lot here because, when they were when the PG&E was polluting the waterways in Hinckley, with chromium, hexavalent chromium, a seriously dangerous carcinogenic chemical, the first year that some of this leakage began to happen and stuff, they went around and told people one thing to make it seem like it was safe because they knew that if they could make it through a year or so without litigation coming at them, that they'd be, safe due to the fact that our legal structures and statutes in this country are geared towards protecting corporations. And we need to be aware of that example and other examples. Similar things happened in Love Canal or different smog events throughout the history of corporate abuse of the environment in this country. And I just think we need to keep that in our mind as we go on here. Let's see what else I have for you guys.
Now, a 3 News Verify.
So this video here is, there's been some claims going around on the internet that, FEMA is going to come. A lot of this is coming from right-wingers that are turning it, like I said, into a conspiracy that this was some sort of act of sabotage. For what reason, I do not know. But part of this is that FEMA is going to come in and crack down and drag people away and stuff. And this is just a news clip verifying it. Now you can make your own, decisions as to if we should vet this or not. But it also has some extra information here, so I want to go ahead and play it for you guys.
To clear up some mixed messages out there over assistance to East Palestine residents and FEMA's role. Here's Carmen Blackwell.
Will the Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA, give assistance to Ohioans after the East Palestine train derailment? We've noticed multiple reports across social media, so let's verify. Here are the sources that we use to confirm: Ohio Governor Mike DeWine, FEMA's Budget in Brief Handbook, and U.S. Senator J.D. Vance. Let's start with the governor. Just this morning, DeWine tweeted that his administration has been in touch with FEMA to talk about the possibility of the state receiving federal support, stating in part, quote, "But FEMA continues to advise that Ohio is not eligible for assistance at this time." Now, we did a deep dive into FEMA's website, and here's what we found. In FEMA's 2023 policy for disaster response, it says, quote, "Through the Disaster Relief Fund, FEMA provides individual and public assistance to state and local governments in order to help families and communities affected by declared disasters to rebuild and recover. FEMA also administers hazard mitigation programs that reduce the risk to life and property from floods and other hazards. FEMA stands ready to provide rapid assistance and resources in emergency situations whenever state and local capabilities are overwhelmed or seriously threatened." Just hours ago, Ohio Senator J.D. Vance visited East Palestine. He says the mix-up with calling in the feds for assistance stems from controversy with officials on who or where to shift the blame of the train's derailment.
There's some tension between declaring a federal disaster and having FEMA come in and then shifting the liability of this accident to the federal government as opposed to the train company that actually caused the problem.
So, will Ohioans receive assistance from FEMA for the East Palestine train derailment? For now, at least, we can verify no. Carmen Blackwell, 3 News.
Now, earlier today, when Governor DeWine spoke with the White House and requested that federal aid from FEMA, he also asked for help from the Department of Health and Human Services and the CDC. NBC News is reporting tonight that the White House is sending teams from both agencies to take a look at health concerns in East Palestine.
Okay, so what do we have here, guys? Apparently, FEMA will not be assisting the residents of East Palestine, with this catastrophe. Now, why is this? J.D. Vance there talks about it's an issue of, who's on the hook for this, right? Who's going to be accountable for this? Who's going to be paying for this? The federal government or the corporation, right? And now I see that perspective, but here's the deal. Yes, of course, the corporation should be the one to have to pay the cost of this fucking catastrophe, every cent of it, and then some. For the psychological trauma and stuff for the residents. I mean, complete cleanup. I mean, fuck, they should also be on the hook to rebuild their fucking rail lines and make them safe so this kind of shit doesn't happen. But obviously, you know, the sort of corporate society we live in here. But I think this also just shows how inept in another way our government is. Because in my eyes, the moment something like this happens, I mean, this is a big enough of a disaster where FEMA, Federal Emergency, you know, Relief Organization, should be on the ground fucking hours after, okay? And fuck the accountability and stuff like that. Figure it out later. There's no reason why that, you know, FEMA can't come in, federal government pays for cleanup, does everything and gets it under control immediately, and then later the corporation's on the hook for all the damages. Do you know what I'm trying to say? Like, whatever the government ended up paying, that corporation should, you know, come back later once we dealt with it. We can't be sitting here waiting for a corporation to do the right thing. And obviously the EPA has been sent there and other federal officials. But, you know, an interesting parallel, you know, we've heard this compared to Chernobyl. Now, Chernobyl was far worse than this. I don't think it's even in the same ballpark. I mean, you have radioactive fallout spreading across half of fucking Eastern Europe and then some, right? Fundamentally different. It's still, that being said, it's a serious fucking crisis. But just look at the way that the Soviet Union responded to Chernobyl, even at its end when it was well along its process of, you know, decay and perestroika and things like this, right? Complete mobilization of the government very quickly to deal with the crisis. And now we can have a conversation of, did they do enough? Was it well done enough? I mean, whatever. But compare that to the sort of paltry response Americans are getting here, right? And of course, this is because it's a corporatized government bought and sold by capitalists, right? It's just crazy to see. I can't think of a reason why FEMA, like I was saying, can't show up and get this under control immediately, day fucking one, or the few days, you know, going after the incident. And then we can, you know, figure out things later, you know, shoot first, ask questions later type of scenario. I do not understand it. It just seems like a talking point to excuse why your government's doing nothing to fucking help you. This next video I'm going to show you guys gets more into the particulates coming out from the burn, right? It is a TikToker. It's a TikToker who apparently got a DM from an environmental scientist, an amateur environmental scientist, apparently. Again, it's TikTok. We have to take everything with a grain of salt. I do not know, but I want to play this because it talks about some of the chemicals, the vinyl chloride, Phosgene that we're hearing now in some recent reports and news articles. And I just want to, you know, kind of pave the way for the next several discussions we'll be having about vinyl chloride and EPA updates. With this, give a perspective from people that are apparently on the ground, everyday people, what they're saying, what they're thinking, what they're analyzing in their own little amateur studies here, right? So I'll go ahead and roll this for you guys.
Guys, another crazy update about the toxic fallout from the Ohio event. This is coming in from Montreal. I got a DM. Okay, hey man, I'm an environmental scientist living and working out of Montreal right now. I've seen your video in the fallout plume. I just want to give you a bit of a further info for any further videos. After doing some testing, the fresh snowfalls around the area are reaching pH levels around 4 to 5, which can be classified as acidic precipitation. Also, within the same snowfalls, we're measuring contaminants ranging between 1,400 and 1,800 parts per million. To put that into perspective better, a pH of 4 or lower will kill most fish, and water with a contaminant part per million above 500, and they're right now finding 1,400 to 1,800 parts per million. Water with a contaminant part per million above 500 is considered unfit for consumption. This is newly gathered data, and I feel without a platform myself, I'm unable to do anything about it. There's little to no coverage of it in the media, and what you're doing to get the message out is what needs to be done in times like this. This is even crazier. Another thing I have to add, well, yes, there is vinyl chloride in the atmosphere and hydrochloric acid in the cloud systems. A lot of what's being found on the ground actually contains phosgene. Now, this sounds legit because in my last video from the Washington Post, they said that phosgene was one of the chemicals that's released when the vinyl chloride is burned. So this makes sense. This is lining up with the Washington Post article. A lot of what's being found on the ground actually contains phosgene. This was used as a chemical weapon in World War I, very unsafe to be around. Levels we are seeing are not enough to quickly cause long-term effects, but definitely enough to make people sick and cause further complications later in life. Holy shit, man.
Yeah, so we have this TikToker influencer or whatever. I don't know who it is. If you guys know who it is, or if they're trustworthy, drop a comment. If you have any more information about phosgene apparently being in this snowfall and groundwater and things like that, you can let me know. Apparently, there are reports coming from official mediums and platforms saying that there was phosgene. But then we're hearing also, they're saying that there's these large amounts, parts per million, of phosgene in the snowfall. But it kind of conflicts with other data suggesting that phosgene dissipates really quickly. I mean, one of the reasons why phosgene was used as a chemical weapon, similar to chlorine gas, things like that in World War I, was because it dissipates really quickly in the air, right? So you could gas an area, potentially kill or maim all of the enemy, and then have it cleared out quickly enough, for a offensive attack, right? Because you don't want your own soldiers going in there and inhaling this chemical and stuff like that. So, I mean, I don't know. Make of it what you will. Again, guys, it's a TikToker. I mean, we can't just, go on something because it's what we want to hear, right? We have to kind of have a skeptical approach to anything, especially with stuff like this. Because as much as we want to highlight the negligence and inhumanity of these corporations, we don't also want to be guilty of, perpetuating misinformation that creates hysteria or panic. We need people to be level-headed and have as close to the truth as possible, right? So next thing I want to pull up here, guys, is some updates from the EPA. They are doing this almost daily. This is from the EPA website, East Palestine train derailment. So let's see what else we got here. This one's from February 19th, so a few days ago. February 19th, 2023, air monitoring and indoor air screening. U.S. EPA continues real-time air monitoring and collecting air samples throughout the community. Air monitoring and sampling will continue until removal of heavily contaminated soil in the derailment area is complete and odors subside in the community. U.S. EPA also continues to assist indoor air screenings in homes. To date, 533 homes have been screened with no exceedances for residential air quality standards. There are 15 homes scheduled for indoor air screening today. So with this part right here, obviously this is polar opposite of what we're seeing with this TikToker using his own air monitoring device. Now, I mean, again, you be the judge of who to trust, right? Or if maybe they're both wrong or whatever. But the question with this is, they say they're going to continue to do this as time goes on until smells dissipate or whatever. And they're saying, to date, 533 homes have been screened with no exceedances for residential air quality standards. Sure, no exceedances in the short term, but if this continues to be an ongoing problem where the number is pretty high despite it not necessarily exceeding the legal limit, what kind of harm could that cause for residents? Like, for an example, Iowa has a severe issue with our waterways being polluted with nitrates and phosphates from fertilizer use. And nitrates and phosphates are, tied with all kinds of reproductive health issues, thyroid issues, cancers, things like that. And apparently the amount of nitrates and phosphates in the water is within the legal limit. However, what we've seen in recent decades is that this has been an ongoing problem for so long that despite the fact that it's within the legal limits of contaminants parts per million, it's still high enough that we're over years, over decades, over generations, it's become a serious issue and causing serious health effects for residents of Iowa and in the Midwest in general. And we've seen also that it's the runoff going from our own watershed. Excuse me, guys. I have had a lot of coffee today and it was upsetting my stomach. we've seen that this runoff is getting from our own watershed and creeks and waterways is getting into the Missouri and the Mississippi River, which is then flowing down to the Gulf of Mexico, which has caused a Gulf of Mexico dead zone where no aquatic life is able to live. And, this is something I might want to do a video on in the future. So if you'd like to see that, drop a comment talking about industrial agriculture and the sort of pollution we've seen from it. But I'm bringing this up because it's like, yes, it's within the legal limit, but even if it's within the legal limit, what does this do over time, right? Let's see. And then they've also tested the water, municipal water. The village of East Palestine's municipal well water sample results show no water quality concerns. Right. The Columbiana County Health District continues to sample private water wells. To date, 52 wells have been sampled, 49 in Ohio and 3 in Pennsylvania. Norfolk Southern is supplying bottled water at their Family Assistance Center. For more information, et cetera, et cetera. So with the water, okay, so they're saying that the water's safe, but they are suggesting that people still drink bottled water. Now, you could point to that as being they're lying, or you could point to it as just being cautious. I note here that it says the private wells, it doesn't give statistics for private wells if any of these 52 private wells that have been tested are contaminated. Now, that could just be that they're, respecting the privacy of those people on their land that they own, if the well's been contaminated or not. Or they could be, sort of withholding information. But again, with the water issue, if we've seen these creeks so polluted, and we know that these particulates have settled in with the moisture in the air and then come down enough to potentially pollute those creeks. Unless this is cleaned up in a serious way, in a proper way, that water is going to leach into the groundwater and could eventually contaminate, people's wells and municipal water sources, which again is the sort of thing that we saw with hexavalent chromium in Hinckley, right, with the Erin Brockovich story. If you've ever seen that movie, that movie had a big impact on me. I actually watched it recently, and in light of everything that was happening, gave me a little inspiration to do a deep dive. So yeah, guys, I don't know. Let's see what else. Soil testing as well. I have here from the EPA. U.S. EPA continues to support Ohio EPA and the state's ongoing and future cleanup activities for the incident, including water quality efforts. Norfolk Southern continued scrapping and removing rail cars at the derailment location, excavating contaminated areas, removing contaminated liquids from affected storm drains. If that's true, that's good. And staging recovered waste for transportation to an approved disposal site or facility. Water continues to be diverted from upstream wetland area to Sulphur Run. So I don't know, make of that what you will, but again, it goes along with what I'm saying. If they don't do, this isn't just in the short term, things may be well enough right now, but if this cleanup is not done correctly, which again is why isn't FEMA here? We can't leave this just to a handful of EPA agents and Norfolk Southern to do this. We need FEMA to be in there, 1,000 boots on the ground taking care of this. Because if this soil isn't properly removed, if storm drains aren't properly cleaned up, if these creek beds aren't dredged and dealt with, this could cause lasting concerns for people in the immediate vicinity of East Palestine for generations, man. I mean, these are dangerous chemicals, right? Let's see what else I got here. Let me close some of this first. You guys know how my computer is. It likes to crack out. And close a little bit of this here. Okay, guys, I'm going to jump back into this here. Had a little bit of a tech issue. Let's see, where were we? Okay, so we just finished the EPA updates. Next up I'm going to bring up for you is from Vice. Just a little bit more information on vinyl chloride. Again, I'm trying to give you guys as many perspectives from as many sources as possible and trying to provide, some analysis on this topic. Let you guys draw your own conclusions at the end of the day because, what are we going to do? We're not there. We don't know for sure. Let's see. Says the trains were transporting vinyl chloride a gas which is not only toxic by itself, but when burned can produce additional toxic gases such as phosgene. So there we have that verified from Vice, and we'll also from other articles as well, that, you know, the burning of vinyl chloride does create phosgene, a dangerous chemical that, you know, was used in World War I as a chemical weapon to kill people. Hydrogen chloride in a class of compounds called dioxins, which I want to highlight because none of this dioxins, we've heard about the vinyl chloride, we've heard about phosgene. We'll see that a lot of this has been, they've sort of waved it away. Whether that's accurate or not is a whole other story. But dioxins, we're not hearing anything about this. We're not hearing anything about this, really. Daniel Westervelt, a research professor at the Columbia Climate School's Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory, wrote in an email to Motherboard, above a certain concentration threshold, each of these chemicals are thought to increase one's risk of developing cancer. Going on with this here, guys, says, however, these gases may no longer be an issue, Westervelt said, hence the EPA statement. Some of the gases I mentioned do not last in the atmosphere for very long before dissipating, such that after 10 days or so, the monitoring EPA is doing now would indeed show up as within the safe range. But it's like, it's a question of, one, before they started doing testing, how hard were people hit with this stuff, right? First off, and over how long of a time? Like, how long did the burn go on? Things like this. I have more here from Vice. Says, that being said, Westervelt highlighted the need to still take precautions. Sampling air quality like the EPA has been might not tell the whole story, given that the contamination area is large enough such that around-the-clock monitoring efforts can't cover everywhere. In my opinion, caution would still be warranted, because what comes to mind with this, guys, is like, for instance, with the phosgene in World War I. If you guys have ever read much about that war and read about gas attacks, chemical attacks, one of the things that you'd hear about is people would put on their masks during the gas attack, and then they'd see that the gas had dissipated, take the mask off, and then, but what they didn't know, or maybe didn't realize or count on, is that some of these gases are heavier, and they'll have a tendency to mix with moisture, as we've talked about, or they'll settle into low-lying areas, right? So people, these soldiers, seeing that the gas was gone, they take their mask off, and then they jump into a foxhole where not only did a bunch of this gas, sink into, it also concentrated. A lot of it would seep in, so there'd be a higher concentration of it, and then they'd asphyxiate or have damages from the chemical attack. That maybe would have been 100-fold if they had just, inhaled the gas, generally speaking, during the actual attack. So, my question is with this is like, what about low-lying areas in the community? What about the creeks that we've seen are highly polluted? Is that emanating toxic gases that people could still be breathing? And if these things aren't dealt with, what's going to be the result? He says it right here. He's like, this doesn't tell the whole story. And this is a, professor or scientist out of a university or a center that, is geared towards doing this sort of stuff. And yeah, there's just no way. And again, this is another case is like, why isn't FEMA doing anything? It's like a handful of EPA officers, even if you have 2 or 3 dozen of them, it's not enough. You need an army of people to make sure that this community is safe and that the surrounding communities are safe. How the derailment will affect water quality is still also to be determined. It will be clear in the coming days as water sample tests come back. The utility West Virginia American Water in Huntington, West Virginia, has not detected any change in water from the Ohio River. Excuse me. It said in an update on February 12th, so it's pretty recent. The utility will be installing a secondary intake on the Guyandere River should the need arise to switch to an alternate water source. So that's good, I guess. So with this, I do want to make a claim. I've talked about how this is a serious event. But I think there's a line between how serious it is and how I said some people are turning it into a hysteria or to a conspiracy. We've heard some discourse around the Ohio River being completely contaminated from this event. And now, this is just one source, but I don't think that's accurate. I think that's a bit of getting ahead of ourselves. Now, just because of the sheer volume of how much water is in the Ohio River and the way that dilution works, I mean, I don't see this particular event causing any lasting serious damage to a large watershed like the Ohio River. And I don't see it affecting people that may get their drinking water from the Ohio River, like downstream and things like that. And I say this because of my own experience living in Iowa, like I was talking about with the pollution of our waterways. This pollution occurs from the spraying of manure on fields in Iowa, right? Where you're supposed to inject it into the ground during the more dry seasons or during the early spring or the later part of spring. And you do this so that you don't have runoff, but these corporations have free wheel here. So they'll just be spraying water during the rainy season, or worse, during winter. They'll just spray hog shit right onto on top of the snow and ice. And what this does is then it melts in the spring, obviously, and all that runoff just goes straight into the creeks and rivers, and then it goes into the Mississippi. And now the reason why I don't think this event in East Palestine is going to have that effect is we're talking for here in Iowa, millions upon millions of literally metric tons of hog shit filled with nitrates, phosphates, and other heavy metals going straight into our waterways here damn near every day, every week, every month. And that took, decades to accumulate in such a way that it actually affected the Mississippi River. And now, I'm not an expert on this, but I do have quite a bit of knowledge of it, being an activist on the front line against industrial agriculture my entire adult life. But if somebody wants to contest me on that information, go right ahead, drop information in the comments, please, please, please. One of the main points of this is to have a dialogue. But, that's kind of what little expertise I may have in water contamination for larger bodies of water like the Ohio River, I think this is probably accurate, guys. And I'm rambling here, and I apologize for that. But let's go on here. This next article I want to pull up is from the Pittsburgh Gazette, just some more information on vinyl chloride, another perspective. I want to give you guys as many perspectives as possible. Says, let's see here. And I'm sorry for pulling this up here, guys. I'm just double-checking, making sure everything's running right. It says, what is vinyl chloride? The chemical released from the East Palestine train cars. After a controlled burn of the chemical, people saw plumes of smoke from miles away. Let's see. We got a few from this one, guys. What is vinyl chloride? Vinyl chloride is a colorless gas and liquid mainly used in the manufacture of plastic materials such as polyvinyl chloride, PVC, used in industrial settings, and plastics such as PVC pipe. According to the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, it has a pleasant odor. I wonder if that's a typo. Maybe not. Some of these chemicals, they smell like you want to eat them sometimes, and that's just fucked up. Don't drink the forbidden Kool-Aid. You know what I'm saying, man? At high concentrations, when burned, it decomposes into various gases, potentially including hydrogen chloride and trace amounts of phosgene. The National Cancer Institute says inhalation of vinyl chloride gas can lead to an increased risk of liver, brain, and lung cancers, as well as lymphoma. Let's see. According to the Agency for Toxic Substances and Disease Registry, vinyl chloride in the air breaks down in a few days, resulting in the formation of several other chemicals, including hydrochloric acid, formaldehyde, and carbon dioxide. I mean, just fucking scary. And even if maybe at the end of the day, these chemicals, it's not like serious to the degree that it's going to cause a bunch of cancer over a widespread area from being in the watershed and the air precipitation. Despite that, man, just look at what we're fucking doing to the planet in the name of capitalist greed. I mean, even if it's not as serious of an event as some people are making out in the short term, I mean, things like this are happening constantly. And it's like, what is the cumulative effect happening on our environment and on our society and on our people? I mean, it's just disturbing. I mean, we're making some real Blade Runner hellscape shit here, man. Slowly, surely, over time, and it's just getting more accelerated. Says here, but it's not just venting into the air. The cloud that was really being produced was not vinyl chloride, but what it was being turned into, the combustion products, said James Fabiusiak. I'm terrible with the names today, guys. Please forgive me. Director of the Center for Healthy Environments and Communities at the University of Pittsburgh School of Public Health. He was especially concerned about phosgene. So, he's saying he's concerned about this. A gas that was used as a weapon in World War I because it can cause lung damage after acute exposure. I'm on number 4 here, right? Sorry, hang on here, guys. No. I am on number 5. Mr. Fab, let's just call him Mr. Fab. Mr. Fab said that once it's in the sky, phosgene disperses. Okay. So this is 2 different scientists saying that. Make of it what you will. So would it make sense for it to be in the snow and stuff? I don't know. So he's not worried about long-term exposure. Rather, he said, but then again, if it fuses with and gets into the water, I mean, I don't know, guys. Again, I'm not a scientist. I'm just giving you as much info as I can here. Rather, he said it was the people who were near the burn in the plume when it was close to the ground who should monitor their respiratory symptoms for a few days, paying attention to a new or aggravated cough, which we're seeing people talk about, trouble breathing or a sore throat. EPA's data showed that readings at monitors during and after the release, including 10 in Pennsylvania, showed no detectable concentration of phosgene. The readings did pick up some hydrochloric acid in the air, but the levels were below what the EPA considers to be dangerous. The monitors also detected hydrogen cyanide, an acid that's used as rodent poison in industrial manufacturing, and is hazardous to humans, but also at levels below federal exposure guidelines. So Mr. Fab, out of this university or whatever, is saying that, this kind of alludes to the fact that it would be unlikely to find high levels of phosgene in the snow. But at the same time, he's warning that, these people just got fucking blasted with it in their community, and that's very serious. And that it needs to be monitored. I mean, they might as well have gone through a World War I chemical attack, it sounds like, right? But I want to point out here, the EPA is saying a lot of different things. Saying it's not as serious as it should be. But again, this goes back to regulatory capture. I didn't fact check or look into who's on these EPA boards and making these decisions. We've seen with like the FDA, the USDA, a lot of times, corporate stooges are on the heads of these organizations. And we've seen many times throughout American history, perhaps most notably the 9/11 disaster with the wreckage, the burning of the wreckage of the Trade Center, where the EPA says things are safe or gives us these readings, and then it comes out later that they completely lied. So I think people are right to be skeptical of trusting what the EPA is saying. But at the same time, when we hear things from these other experts, they're saying that on a larger scale, it's likely not as serious. Again, going back to, is the Ohio River contaminated? Is the air unbreathable and dangerous for miles and miles away? With all these sort of things, guys, the truth probably lies somewhere in the middle between the EPA and government officials' official statements, what the experts here are saying, in the middle, left or right, and then what people are, speculating on along the fringes, right? So, the truth is probably somewhere in the middle here. I mean, this is very serious for the people in this community. And these sort of incidents we're seeing throughout the country as we have a breakdown of, civic infrastructure and regulatory capture and complete negligence from these corporations. I mean, we've seen it over and over and over and over again. How many horror stories have you heard? Like, Teflon poisoning, Love Canal, toxic waste, 3 Mile Island. I mean, the list goes on. 9/11 wreckage. These are serious events, but it's not like Chernobyl or Fukushima in scale, I don't believe. I believe it's very serious for the people living there, and it's indicative of a systemic issue that needs to be addressed, right? You can drop a comment, let me know what your perspective is. But as far as, data coming out of East Palestine itself, the discussion around the chemicals and the pollution, that's mostly, what I have for you. I want to get into some more adjacent discussion. Right, I'll start with this here. This is a tweet that's been going around from Good Vibe Politique. I've seen some good posts out of this guy, over the several months that I've kind of had him on follow. But this is also, I've seen this going around. He says, U.S. Today's parent company and Norfolk Southern have the same two top shareholders, BlackRock and Vanguard. That should really help put in perspective why USA Today went out of their way to, quote-unquote, fact-check news covering the East Palestine, Ohio chemical spill. And you can see here a tweet from Norfolk Southern. The journalists at USA Today fact-checked many of the claims circulating. So I've seen this, and again, I'm a very skeptical person. I wasn't super skeptical about this because, BlackRock, Vanguard, these companies own fucking just about everything. But I did want to fact check it a little bit because I've heard a lot of comrades also, referencing this. So I went in first off and I did who owns Norfolk Southern. I had already known this, but accurate, very accurate here. Norfolk Southern official website, nonetheless. Top holders, Vanguard, BlackRock. Total percentage of shares, 8% and 5%, and then the total amount. It looks like they may have sold off a bunch of theirs recently. I don't know what the story is with that. But it looks here like they own 10,000 or 10 million, I'm sorry, way off. So yes, that is true. BlackRock does own Norfolk Southern. They own other rail lines as well. But then I went to dive in to see if USA Today was owned by BlackRock. Initially, I found nothing tying BlackRock to USA Today in the immediate. I guess this right here is actually. Before we get into that, I'll show you. This is some of the fact checking that is coming out of the USA Today article. Ohio train derailment fact check. What's true? What's false? I'll just pop these up quick. I won't dive too much into them. Claim the Ohio River is being poisoned. Okay. I don't even need to show you all these. Claim the government has locked down East Palestine. Let's see what else we have. Residents of East Palestine have been told not to return by local officials. Animals in the area are dying. And then claim dead fish and cattle have been reported hundreds of miles away. Okay, so that's just a taster of some of, and I'll prepare this next little segment for you guys. That's just a little taster of some of the stuff they fact-checked. And I read it, and, this tweet was saying that because he's alluding that Norfolk Southern is owned by BlackRock. BlackRock also owns USA Today. So the reason why they're doing this fact check is to discredit people's claims that very well may be real. I don't know. But reading that fact check, I did not see anything that was grossly attempting to bury the truth. It was candid about the amount of fish kills and animal kills within Palestine And some of the stuff that it said was false. It's like, just based on my own discussion with you guys here and resources I've checked, and just thinking on this and trying to be secular, not hysterical, it seems pretty accurate. So I went and checked, because we have seen instances like this where these news media outlets are owned by giant corporations, and they will cover ass for giant corporations. But I did try to go and check who owns USA Today. I did not find a direct tie with BlackRock. It says Gatehouse media owner to acquire USA Today owner Gannett. So they became a conglomerate. Gatehouse Media's owner and Gannett have agreed to merge in a deal aimed at cutting overlapping costs, blah, blah, blah. So who owns Gannett or Gatehouse Media? It's actually owned by SoftBank of Japan. Okay, so then I went in and I looked, who owns SoftBank, right? It did look like at one time BlackRock owned a pretty good amount of shares here, but recently, 2 quarters ago in the business cycle, they had sold these off. So as of right now, BlackRock does not. Maybe I'm wrong. If you have other information, please send it my way. I want to get the truth out to people. At this time, it does not look like BlackRock owns any of the shares of the parent company, SoftBank, that owns Gatehouse, that owns USA Today. And even in the past, when they did own some of SoftBank, this is current owners, right? You can see some of them here. But if I'm not mistaken, even when SoftBank did, or when BlackRock did own SoftBank, they really didn't own that much compared to some of these other corporations, right? 10,000 something shares compared to 160, 10, or 70, 140. So I fact checked that. That is not accurate. But I don't want to cross hairs here. I just don't want people making a false claim. Again, if I'm wrong, please let me know. Maybe have some source I didn't find. It took some time to dig that up. You know how these corporations are. Now, I don't want to split hairs, okay? Because just because BlackRock doesn't necessarily own USA Today doesn't mean that these news media outlets aren't covering ass for these giant corporations. Because guess what? Even if BlackRock doesn't own it, some other giant corporation does. And I'm betting your ass somewhere along the way, they own shares of Norfolk Southern and other railroads, and it's part of their. And even if they don't, they still have a vested interest, the same vested interests that the rail lines do, in covering each other's ass whenever this fucked up corporate shit does happen. But again, there's this line that we have to draw between that sort of analysis and that sort of understanding, and making false claims and being hysterical about it, right? And that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to present all this for you guys to make your own decisions. Again, like I said in that USA Today article, I don't see that anything that they fact-checked was necessarily a brazen cover-up at all. They were candid about some of the things that are going on that have been reported on. I don't know. I just want to be careful of like being, holy shit, it's this deep cover up. I'm sure there is some degree of cover up, and they're trying to obviously soften the severity of it. But there's that line between they are trying to soften the severity of it so it doesn't cause a larger public uproar. And then this thing that's saying that it's like this whole Chernobyl and the Ohio River is going to be completely polluted and people hundreds of miles away are going to get cancer. It's like, what I'm trying to say? Like, let's be real about how serious this is. We don't need to embellish it. We need to know seriously what's going on, right? Let's see here. I feel like I missed something here. Yeah, I did. I want to go back here. I've talked about Erin Brockovich quite a bit during this little episode. But I have an interview she did with like a local news station, WKCY or something like that. And I want to bring this up because she knows a lot about this shit, and she's been doing a lot of media coverage regarding East Palestine the last week or so. And I want to bring this up because she kind of talks about some of the things I talked about like the potential for long-term damage and being realistic about what it is and like trying to keep the community together, right? Do a little checky here. Everything seems good. So I'm going to play this for you guys and we'll talk about it. Just a short clip.
You know far more about this than I do, but I keep thinking about the EPA after 9/11 on the pile and telling all those firemen and police and first responders, oh, the air is fine, there's nothing going on here. And then they all start dying of cancer over 20 years. We finally passed some legislation. So, I mean, what are these people supposed to do?
They're going to need to trust themselves and their instincts, their own eyes and ears. They know what they've experienced. They know what they continue to smell, what they continue to see, the health symptoms that they continue to have. And they need to act on that and not wait for any well-intended or misleading or otherwise statement from the US EPA or Norfolk. And that's one thing that I've seen in every one of these communities that is critical. They don't need to be gaslit, if you will, and they walk away very uncertain. And I need them to stay together as a community and pay attention and document and journal what's happening to them. Because, Andrea, there's not going to be an immediate overnight solution to this disaster, and they need to hear the full truth. And I watched the US EPA, Michael Regan drinking the water. And in that moment, that condition could have been safe, but that's not going to be how it's always going to be. We're going to have to deal with how all these chemicals migrate through the water, where they hit the wells. So there's so much more to this to ensure, not only in a moment, but for the future, these people, their water and their health are in fact not being jeopardized. Well, this is total lack of preparedness or planning for any type of incident like this that could occur. There's been accidents and derailments on this line before, and everybody should have been better prepared. And I think that's the thing that's so frustrating to these people. And now they feel like they're being run around, and it's 3 weeks in, as you said, and they should be monitoring these people. They should be doing urinalysis. They should be doing blood draws. And our concern has always been, are they testing for every chemical? Nobody's even mentioned dioxide and how dioxin and how toxic that is. And so there's so much misinformation. It's just creating a worse scenario for the community. But they should be there monitoring their health, running tests. What are you looking for? Sharing these results with the people.
Yeah, so there you have it. That's the famous Erin Brockovich, who has done class action lawsuits for all sorts of environmental catastrophes like this that affect working class people. My understanding is, and I don't have any information on this, we already have so much going on here, that many of the citizens of East Palestine, Ohio, are going to be filing a class action lawsuit or a series of class action lawsuits. I've seen that Erin Brockovich, like I said, has been really throwing in her weight. She's made that's just one of several news media appearances she's made. I don't know if she has any tie to these class action lawsuits. I think that would be really great. Obviously, she's, as far as I know, maybe you guys know something about her, I don't. But, I don't know that you could have a better person on your side during this sort of situation. So we do know that there's going to be some sort of class action lawsuits coming out of this. Will Erin Brockovich be more involved in that capacity? I don't know. Drop a comment. Let me know if you know. But, this is what we're seeing, guys. Some other information I have here, and I won't pull up any articles. There's been a series of train derailments. I have 4 right here that have happened just since this incident in East Palestine. There's been several more accidents, some of them involving hazardous chemicals. Obviously, they didn't end up as catastrophic as it did in East Palestine. But let's see here. I have Honoree, Spartanburg County derailment in South Carolina. There was a crash in Detroit. In the Houston area, there's another crash. In Wayne County, Michigan, there's another crash. And then Erin Brockovich, in that short clip that I showed you as well, talked about how, there's been crashes, derailments on these lines before. Where is the preparedness? Where is FEMA? Where is local organizations? Like, this is becoming such a goddamn normal thing now. It's become systemic, and we can expect more of it. We've seen comments from Pete Buttigieg, the Department of Transportation, saying that there's nothing that he can do about this. There's nothing he can do to regulate the rail lines, that we should essentially expect more derailments as a cost of business. Complete and total negligence from all levels of government, from the local to the county to the federal to the state. It's just an absolute embarrassment. And we're dealing with this systemic issue. And then we have this article here that I'm going to show for you guys. This is from The Lever. They've done a lot of great coverage on this. Biden Department of Justice backing Norfolk Southern's bid to block lawsuits. A looming Supreme Court decision could end up making it easier for the railroad giant, whose train derailed in Ohio this month, to block lawsuits, including from victims of the disaster. Got more of this here for you guys. This is just absolutely insane. Now, this case has been going on for a while, since at least 2017, as you can see here. But it's just apropos that it's coming into focus here now in the Supreme Court after this has happened and all these other derailments I was just talking about. In the case against Norfolk Southern, the Biden administration is siding with the railroad in its conflict with a cancer-stricken former rail worker. A high court ruling for Norfolk Southern could create a national precedent limiting where workers and consumers can bring cases against corporations. The lawsuit in question, filed initially in a Pennsylvania county court in 2017, deals with a state law that permits plaintiffs to file suit against any corporation registered to do business there, even if the actions that gave rise to the case occurred elsewhere. In its fight against the lawsuit, Norfolk Southern is asking the Supreme Court to uphold the lower court ruling, overturn Pennsylvania's law, and restrict where corporations can be sued, upending centuries of precedent. The court rules in favor of Norfolk Southern. It could overturn plaintiff-friendly laws on the books in states including Pennsylvania, New York, and Georgia that give workers and consumers more leeway to choose where they take corporations to court, an advantage national corporations already enjoy. Of course they enjoy that advantage. They enjoy every advantage possible, every advantage that their bought-up government can afford them, right? As they often require customers and employees to agree to file litigation in specific locales whose laws make it harder to hold companies accountable. The way that we have wrapped oppression and abuse up in legalese is really beautiful, isn't it? It is also apparently what the Biden administration wants. The Justice Department filed its own brief in favor of Norfolk Southern. Should Norfolk Southern prevail, the company could use the ruling to challenge other lawsuits on the grounds that they've been filed in the wrong venue, said Scott Nelson, an attorney with the Public Citizen Litigation Group, which filed a brief backing the plaintiff in the Pennsylvania case. Such a decision could affect lawsuits filed by residents exposed to hazardous chemicals as a result of accidents in other states, such as the East Palestine, Ohio derailment disaster, which occurred 5 miles west of the Pennsylvania state line. Norfolk Southern might say, you can only sue us in Ohio or Virginia, where Norfolk Southern is headquartered, even if you were injured at your home in Pennsylvania from an accident that took place 5 miles away in Ohio. So I wanted to bring this up because it's incredibly important. The government is in bed with these corporations. I mean, whoa, wow, you're shocked, aren't you? But this is just an example of the sort of legalese, like I said, that they've wrapped corporate oppression, domination, and abuse in, right? And workers have so few avenues for appeal, of building power, of fighting back against abuses that take their fucking lives and diminish their quality of life. And that class war does not stop. Even though workers already have so little avenues, they will not rest until they take the rest of them from us. They will not rest until we have no way to turn to fight for, our rights as working class people, for our rights to life, liberty, and the fucking pursuit of happiness, right? But guys, this is really all I have for you. I'm sure there's much, much more coming out of this that will be coming out of this over the following days, weeks, months, and even years. Like was said with Erin Brockovich and some of the articles I discussed and perspectives I brought up. This doesn't end when the smoke is gone and the EPA officers have left. These environmental catastrophes go on for years and then destroy lives, completely destroy lives. And, we see this class action lawsuit that's being filed. Hopefully these people will get some justice. I hope I've brought enough perspectives forward from you guys, from people, everyday people on the ground in the news media and on different TikTokers, from the EPA, from experts in litigation and catastrophes like this, like Erin Brockovich. I hope I brought all of this together enough for you guys, for you to draw your own conclusions about the severity and breadth of this situation, right? I mean, we're seeing things all the way over here. We're seeing things all the way over here, right? As far as my own opinion, I do feel like the people of East Palestine are being lied to about the severity of this incident and what they stand to lose and how dangerous it may be for them over the long term. I mean, we're seeing absolutely destroyed creeks and waterbeds. Who knows how bad the soil is after the air particulates settled. But on the same side of that coin, I think we are seeing the truth, if not suppressed, maybe that's not the best word, softened for the public about how bad it is for the residents. But on the same side, on the other side of the coin, rather, I think we're seeing some hysteria around this, about the severity that it spells for the greater ecology of the surrounding areas. But then again, I don't know, guys. The chemicals that are apparently in that snowfall that we saw with those earlier TikToks, I don't know, man. At the end of the day, I think the truth lies somewhere in the middle, and only time is going to tell. I hope I've given you guys some resources to make your own opinions. And if you have more, please share with me in the comments. Maybe I'll do some more follow-up on this. This type of issue is important to me because as somebody who lives in Iowa with some of the worst, most polluted waterways in the country as a result of corporate greed, I live with this daily. I don't know what's in the water I drink. I don't know how bad it is. I know I've seen my wetlands and waterways destroyed. So on that level, I feel for the people of Palestine. So I feel, really at home in this issue, and maybe I'll do more coverage on it. So let's get a conversation going down in the comments, guys. Let's discuss this more. Add more information. Tell me what you think. Do you think maybe I'm being too skeptical about the sort of damage that this could spell for the broader, Ohio River Valley and even people in goddamn Canada, right? But yeah, guys, as I said, that's all I have for you. Don't forget to like. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to drop those comments. As I said, let's get this conversation going. I think it's important. Let's get this information out there. And remember, guys, I'm doing this all me. I'm the producer. I'm the personality. I'm the researcher. I'm the social media marketer. And as you guys know, I'm making a huge push to, make this financially sustainable so that I can do it full time. You guys have seen me putting in the work. I'm busting my ass off. I've been stuck in this little fucking studio the last few days trying to pull all this together for you guys. So if you want to support my independent media work, you can do that on Patreon at patreon.com/entitledmillennials. You can join me there for $1 a month. Most of us aren't going to miss $1 a month missing. We'll spend that much renting a movie on YouTube or on a cup of coffee. You know, if hundreds of people that watch this show regularly support me for that $1, that's it, guys. I'm a full-time YouTuber doing independent media, bringing up these discussions. And you've seen over the years, I'm going to put the goddamn work in. So support me there if you can. Patrons get early access to all content. They get exclusive posts. They get behind-the-scenes content, including behind-the-scenes discussion on the issues. You know, I don't go full bore as I do on the channel because I want all information to be, publicly available to everybody. I don't want to put it behind a paywall. But we do have some interesting conversations on there, including conversation I had with Colton, 20-plus minutes talking about walkable cities, reactionary politics, and things like that. And then, all of our patrons, they get thanked at the end of every single episode or video that comes out on YouTube. So if you want to support me there, greatly appreciated. Patreon.com/entitledmillennials. Other than that, guys, again, that's all I have for you. As always, it's great hanging out with you. And I'll speak to you again soon.